the most underrated scene in Psycho, and why it's the scariest. Most people think the scariest moment in Psycho is the shower scene, and they're not wrong. It's shocking, violent, iconic. But the truth is, by the time we get to that scene, the horror has already begun. And it begins, quietly. Over dinner, I'm Kevin Frazier, horror writer and filmmaker, and today I want to look at what might be the most underrated scene in Psycho. The parlor scene between Norman Bates and Marion Crane. Because this scene doesn't just set up the horror, it is the horror. Before the shower, before the knife, before the blood, we get conversation, a quiet room, stuffed birds watching from the walls, Norman Bates, smiling, polite, almost awkward, and Marion Crane, trying to make sense of him. Nothing violent happens here, but something shifts. This is the moment where the film stops being a crime story, and becomes something much darker. Look at the room Norman invites her into. It's filled with stuffed birds, frozen, preserved, perfectly still.
Norman even says he enjoys stuffing them himself. I enjoy stuffing them myself.
That detail matters, because it tells us something without saying it directly. Norman prefers things that don't resist him, things he can preserve, arrange, and keep from changing. The birds aren't decoration, they're a reflection of his mind. As the conversation continues, Norman starts to reveal more. He talks about his mother, about being trapped, about people being caught in private traps, and for a moment, he almost seems self-aware. Like he knows something is wrong, but he can't escape it. That's what makes this scene unsettling. Not because Norman is obviously dangerous, but because he feels almost sympathetic, until he doesn't. There's a subtle shift in his tone, a flash of anger when Marion suggests putting his mother somewhere else. It's brief, but it's there, and in that moment, the mask slips, just enough for us to feel it. We don't fully understand Norman yet, but we sense something underneath, something unstable, something hidden, and that's where the real horror begins. The famous shower scene doesn't come out of nowhere. It works because of this moment, because we've already stepped into Norman's world, we've already felt the unease, the quiet wrongness of it all, so when violence finally happens, it doesn't feel random, it feels inevitable. The most powerful horror doesn't always come from what we see. It comes from what we begin to understand, just before it's too late. And in Psycho, that understanding begins in a small room, surrounded by things that have already been preserved. If you enjoy this kind of psychological horror breakdown, I write original horror stories and create films that explore these same ideas, what's beneath the surface, and what's waiting there. You can check those out in the links in my YouTube profile.